Hello and welcome back to the Ultimate Fighting Casuals. I'm Tom.
I'm Jack.
So this video is a little bit of a different one. It's going to be looking at the major players, a bit of a teach me video of the Bantamweight division, so 135 pounds. Now, there are lots and lots of players that we're going to touch on because everybody could be holding the belt, and that's actually no joke. In the next 2 years, this belt could change hands like a hot potato. But why this division? Why am I so excited about it? And why should you care as the viewer?
Yeah, absolutely. And why is someone like me as representing the viewer today? Because just to jump in, Moz is the one that knows the most about this. I am really a bit of a fraud here. I don't know nowhere near as much. This is why it's a bit of a teach me video. So I am playing viewer a little bit here. Moz has sort of explained to me why this is like a great division to want to keep an eye on, to look at, and why the actual hype is there. Because I've been hearing the hype, and that's what made me look, I should maybe look at these sort of fights. Like, because I come from the boxing side of heavyweights, knockouts, big throwing punches, all this insane stuff. And when you get more into the UFC, you look at these technical fighters, especially at this level, and I think that's sort of one of the main points to talk about. I mean, it's just one of the best things about it.
100%. So yeah, to jump on the back of that, the technical aspect of these fighters is what I want to focus on, and why I'm ultimately so excited. There's a lot to be said about big knockouts, and if you're 200 plus pounds and you swing a fist and it connects, the likelihood is you are going to put somebody down. And as much as these, the bigger boys look at Stipe and Ngannou, they are throwing bombs and there's absolutely punching power and technique involved. It's just different. From top to bottom, bantamweight is stacked. And to see things like the Corey Sandhagen knockout with the flying knee, it's unbelievable. And to understand that these guys are 9.5 stone doing that is just
wow. That's when you say it like that. I mean, I know we talk a lot in pounds because it's like we do the American as to how the UFC weigh it, like 135, 125. But for me, like when you say 9.5 stone, how are they knocking each other out at that weight? I mean, that's absolutely insane, mate.
It's all about athletic ability and technique, which is why these fights are so exciting. So the easiest place to start to look at breaking the division down and the major players is this weekend. We've got a title fight with Jan and Sterling. I cannot wait. It's going to be really
I'm buzzing, mate. I mean, you've been hyping this up. I mean, after the Sandhagen KO and stuff like that, I mean, saw that and it's like, okay, you need to keep an eye on this now. Yeah. And you're like, shit, Jack, there's a 3 title fight like card coming up. We all know about it. And this fight is like one that I think will slip between the cracks in terms of because Adesanya's on the card.
I agree.
And I think that that's a bit of a shame because this needs to be kept an eye on. Jan and Sterling, from what I know, and they're the 2 main guys I've looked at. I mean, Jan especially is very, very impressive to me. Like, he's the one I really keep an eye on more, and I think like he's the one that maybe has the edge here. But I don't know enough, Moz. Who's more technical? Who's the better striker?
Well, Jan Sterling, Jan Sterling. Jan's striking, his Muay Thai in particular, is where he really sort of excels. We saw it against Jose Aldo, who is no slump in terms of Muay Thai striking. Him take over that fight and really assert his dominance. Should have been stopped earlier. But looking at his just stand-up game, I think that Sterling's going to have some real issues. It's going to be Sterling's output versus Jan's power. I think Jan is going to try and stand and counter, whereas Sterling is going to have to try and challenge him, change levels and make him think rather than just getting in that flow state, because he'll just batter you.
Do you think Sterling can take him down here? Is this something that's going to go towards the floor? I mean, I've looked through his record, so he's on like a 5-fight win streak. He's only ever had 2 knockouts in his career, and he hasn't had one in the UFC. It goes to decisions or submissions for Sterling. So, do you see that going that way with Jan, who's typically a good, as you said, Muay Thai striker? I know his boxing's extremely good. I've watched a lot of highlights from that specifically. Yeah. So, can it go to the floor? Will it change those levels?
I don't think it will. I think Jan's going to keep a good job of staying on the feet, and I think if he does, it's going to go no further than 3 rounds. But if it goes further, I honestly believe we're going to see a Sterling decision and him either get the submission. I know I'm completely on the fence and I haven't answered your question there. Yeah. I think the most likely, 6 out of 10 times, Jan knocks him out in 3. 4 out of 10 we see Sterling do it. But it is going to be such a close fight, and that's how on the fence I am. Keep an eye out for this one. So, as I say, the belt could change hands so many times. I want to look at a couple of the other players in this division, and on this card actually is Dominick Cruz, one of the OGs of this division. He's fighting a guy called Casey Kenny, who's really up and coming. He's awkward, southpaw wrestler. He's just going to offer a lot of questions for Dominick. He's aware of this though. I watched the fight recently, I think it was Ariel Helwani. he's so cerebral and he's so aware of what's going on. I believe Dominick Cruz's biggest asset is his mentality. He doesn't accept any bullshit, doesn't give himself any excuses, and wants to come back and work hard. He said after the last Cejudo fight, he's been in the gym for 6 months, non-stop, getting sparring in. And he didn't want to make excuses. He said he only had 11 sparring sessions before the Cejudo fight after coming back for 2.5 years.
Yes. Yeah.
He's got that acumen, he's held the belt, and I think that we're going to see a masterclass from him this weekend against a really dangerous contender. But it's the top of the prelim, so it's on at good times, so keep an eye out. So I want to touch on a fighter who's absolutely on fire. Obviously he lost to Aljamain Sterling. I'm talking about Corey Sandhagen. He's on a 2-fight impressive as hell KO win streak against a flying knee against Frankie Edgar and a spinning heel kick against Marlon Moraes. Now his ability, speaks for itself. He trains at Elevation, so with Overeem and Curtis Blades. Okay. So in that iron sharpens iron conversation. But he also used to train with TJ Dillashaw, who's obviously coming off of suspension. And I want to see that fight so much.
I want to see that fight, mate. That is a great fight. That sounds like a great fight. I want to see that.
I believe that Sandhagen should be fighting for the belt. I mean, this Jan Sterling fight took so long to come around, but that's the fight for me. I think with TJ Dillashaw coming back, and I'm just going to get to that in a second, there's that sparring element, and he is so up and coming, so awkward, and the things that he can do in the octagon are beautiful. So let's get him together. So to go into a little bit more about TJ Dillashaw, he's never lost the bantamweight belt. He hasn't lost it. So the reason he got suspended, he went down to 125 to fight Henry Cejudo for the flyweight belt. In doing so, taking the muscle off of his frame, he had to start taking EPO. Taking EPO, which is quite famous in cycling.
He looked awful though, mate. He looked awful. I think that's probably the worst I've ever seen anyone. Worse than the McGregor one, I think, and that's like the notorious.
So sucked out.
Yeah, I mean that's like one of the most famous ones. But Jesus Christ, that's the worst one I've ever seen for sure. Absolutely. I agree. So if he was really on EPOs for that reason, I think it's plausible.
I agree.
That's the right word to use. I think it's plausible. Was it really? I mean, you can give or take, but just looking at him, mate, he shouldn't have gone down to that weight. It didn't make sense.
No, it didn't make sense for him, and he's realised that. He's reflected on that mistake, and look, he's ultimately paid the price for 2 years because he's not been able to defend that belt, get those pay-per-view points and build his legacy. So he definitely understands that he's paid for that, I think.
Absolutely, mate.
And I do also want to mention, just for sort of his sake, USADA did go back and look at all of his samples in much higher detail after he popped for EPO against Cejudo, and nothing came back at all.
That's great. I like seeing that because that shows real integrity. It shows honesty as well, and that's overall ultimately good for him, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's good for the sport.
So obviously you want to see Sandhagen versus Dillashaw just for all the right reasons, really. It sort of seems like one of those unofficial titles where both of them are just as good sort of to win the title or to at least challenge for it. But obviously we got 2 guys this weekend fighting. So realistically, we're not going to get too into it, but say one of them takes away the belt, obviously they have to.
Yeah.
Say this fight happens, does the winner then fight for the belt? Does the winner fight Sterling or Jan if they lose? You know what I mean? What really happens now? So if they are that good and unofficial, where does it go from there?
No, I completely understand where you're coming from, and without getting too much into the MMA math, I do just think the winner of Dillashaw, Cody, should go and fight for the belt. And I don't think that there should be any argument for that. Dillashaw, as I say, he never lost that 135 belt. He did lose the fight quite badly against Cejudo at flyweight, but we've touched on that.
Yes.
I really do believe that he deserves an immediate title shot, but I also believe that Sandhagen deserves an immediate title shot. Wow. So that's why I suggest putting them together. Yeah. The winner gets the winner of the fight this weekend, and it's going to be flames. Moving on to the final guy I want to talk about in this video. He's been away. It's the king of cringe, Triple C, Henry Cejudo. He is so able, and it really frustrates me to see him walk away from the sport just purely for the money. But ultimately, the Olympic gold medal wrestling, the 2 belts, it speaks for themselves. I really think he could be the best we've ever seen, and I think he took himself out of that mix maybe for the better. He might have given himself a bit of time on the damage kind of front.
And you never know how much that's going to actually help someone. When they have that time away from the cage, when they can just, even as a champion, he didn't need it. Like, he didn't lose or anything. But just stepping back as the king like that, letting these guys figure things out, sitting back, it may allow him to come back even a better fighter. Okay. However, but what that does, what you said to me earlier, is like, he called Dana's bluff. He called the UFC's bluff, ultimately, for he wants more money. If he's going to come back at all, it will be for the more money. We know that regardless. So I think it's a bit of a shame. It's always 50-50 with that. It's like, do you go for your legacy and career and be the GOAT, or do you just want a little bit more money, take a bit of time off, and maybe come back and win in a different way? I'm not sure entirely how I feel in the situation. I just know that I want to see Cejudo back. I only got to see him fight once, and that was versus Cruz. Yeah, and I loved it. And it should have gone on longer, and I wanted to see more of it. It was a shame to see him retire there, but I know you think he can come back and really mix this division up. But when's it going to be, mate?
I think we'll see him in there by summer next year, so summer 22. He's so capable though. It's not just the wrestling, just to touch on what you say. The flying knee to ultimately end the fight with Dominick Cruz, the punches, the kicks, he is so good everywhere. And so explosive and quick that I think that he could come back and take the division. But because of how the division is with Sandhagen and Dillashaw, thank you very much. With Sandhagen, Dillashaw, Jan Sterling taking so long to come about, I think it's just going to be a bit more time until we see him come back. But when we do, I think he could prove himself as the best 135er we've ever seen and just take that bantamweight crown and run with it.
Okay, so that is everything for today's video. This was a really cool little teaching video. I feel like I know a lot more about the 135 division and just knowing more names, knowing who did what, and also knowing what people are good at. It's just great to know. I'm really looking forward to this fight this weekend, or the two fights actually. I cannot wait to see Dominic back in the UFC. 100%. I mean, that's going to be great. I mean, I just can't wait. Make sure you keep an eye out for it, and thank you so much for watching the videos recently. We really appreciate all the love, the likes, comments, subscribes, everything. It's just really, really good. So thank you very much. Anything at all from you, Moz?
Keep going on the Insta. I'll keep going if you keep following. So yeah,
absolutely. Get on it. It's down below anyway. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.